Now it's time to talk about reference files and raster files. This is going to be a very basic introduction. It's not going to cover every possible scenario, but hopefully it'll be enough to get you started and help you in the process of working with reference files and raster files. So the first thing we're going to do is look at our reference file dialog box. This is up under our Home tab. If we go under the primary group, you're going to see Attached Tools, and then you'll see there's References and Raster Manager. First, we'll look at References. We already have a reference file attached, and that's the border sheet there. So this will help us to kind of explore the reference file dialog box. So there's a menu bar where you're going to see Tools and Properties. If I go to Tools, you're going to see there's options. Again, if I had no reference files attached, these would all be grayed out except for Attach. But because I have a reference file, these become enabled. So we're going to go to the next menu, which is Properties. Here, Attachment. This brings up the attachment settings of a reference file. We also have the option to update the sequence, things like that. I'm going to dismiss that. Then we have icons across the top. These are shortcuts to the most commonly used tools with reference files. First one we'll look at there is Attach Reference. Then there's Clip, that's very common. And then there's Reload a reference file. We also have at the end, we can detach a reference file if we wanted to. Below that is what we call the list box. And we're going to take a look at these columns. The first column is the slot. This is the order in which a reference file was attached. It doesn't really affect much here at Caltrans. The next one is going to be, is it up to date or its status? Here, if you attach a reference file, somebody else can have that file open. We can do that because you're in read only. If that file changes, you'll see a pencil icon appear in that column for that reference file. You could then reload the reference file if you needed to see those changes. The third column is Activate Status. You can activate a reference file so that you can do what we call edit in place. Then we have things like the name of the file, the model, the description, logical name, which we'll discuss when we go to attach a file. And towards the end, we have these columns that have checks in them. These are the most commonly used items on this dialog. The first check mark is for display. If there's a check, that means that the reference file is displayed. If I click on the check, you can see it turns off the reference file, the border. If I click it again, you can see it turns it on. So that's a way to turn off the entire reference file. We can turn off levels for the reference file too to be more granular. But if you want to turn the whole thing off, that's one way to do it. The next check is for snap. If you don't want to be able to snap two elements in the reference file, which is pretty common for like contour, things like that. Next check is for locate. If this is turned on, this means that I can copy elements from the reference file into my active file. And if that's turned off, then I will not be able to do that. Along the bottom, we have some options. We have scale, so we can change the scale of the reference file, which again, you would not do if you have a coordinate correct file. We do not scale it up or down. We leave it at 1:1, unless again, otherwise instructed. We have the rotation of the attachment. Again, this is attached and it's rotated so that the north arrow is not pointing straight up. You can see up here, our north arrow is pointing off to the right. That's true north. Below that, we have some icons again to turn on and off, display, snap, locate, things like that. We also have an option to turn on and off the display of raster. If the file you have attached has a raster, we can see that by turning it on and off. Okay, so we'll do that actually when we talk about raster. So that's a quick tour of the reference file dialog box. Now let's talk about attaching a reference file. So we're going to use the shortcut icon right here, Attach Reference. I'm going to go ahead and Data or left click on that. This is going to take me to the last place that I attached a file. So in this case, I was doing an example of attaching a file that had imagery attached to it. So we need to get to our current project directory. I'm going to show you a little shortcut. In this case, in the upper right corner, you'll see a little yellow folder icon with a blue star. It says Directory History. I'm going to click on that. And number 1 on that list right there will always be your current project folder. So that's what I'm going to select. That's going to take me to my current project directory. That, in this case, is where I have my files that I want to reference. Now, the files that I'm planning to reference are going to be the AA file, which is my alignment, the BB, which is my topo, and then the CF, or clip frame file. So I'm going to be attaching the clip frame file first, just as an example. You're going to see on the right, there's a preview, and then there's attachment method. Right now it's currently set to interactive. If I click here, you're going to see the other choices. Interactive, probably the most commonly used one. The second most common would be coincident world, and we'll be doing that a little bit later. So I'm going to choose interactive. I've selected the file I want to attach. I'm going to click open. This dialog is the interactive. So across the top here, you're going to see the name of the file. You're going to see the path to the file. You'll also see model option. In this case, we only have one model. And here at Caltrans in roadway, we use one model per DGN. Structures, they use multiple models. If you get an AutoCAD file, which we can attach an AutoCAD file, you may see that they have model and layouts inside there. So that's something to be aware of. But the most common example, you'll have a roadway drawing. It'll have one model called default. Logical, this is an optional thing for the first time you attach a reference file. Logical can be used for you to help differentiate the DGN files you're attaching. As an example, let's say you have an alignment and that alignment was put together from as-built drawings from a project that was done 10 years ago. That's not current, but let's say you also have alignment information for that project area that is current. So you're going to be attaching both of these maybe to compare them to get an idea of what changed. You're going to need to be able to tell the difference. The name of the file may not be indicative of what's in it. So by giving it a logical name, you can say alignment from as-builts, and then you can say alignment current or proposed. So that could help you to differentiate. It's just a way for you to name an attachment. And again, this could be done after you attach it if you want to. Description, this is an optional thing. You can put whatever you'd like. Under orientation, this list box, again, we're doing coordinate correct geometry. It's alignment information. We would always want to choose coincident world. Now, I just clicked on it, so it changes to a blue background. Before that, it had a light gray. That meant it was chosen. So I didn't have to click on it, but I wanted to illustrate that. Down below, detail scale, again, you don't change that if you're doing alignment information or coordinate correct geometry. Folks in structures would do that. That would be fine. Our scale, again, that's the same thing as this up above. Scale 1:1 for coordinate correct geometry. Now down below, we have nested attachments. We have three choices: no nesting, live nesting, and copy attachment. We will discuss that in a little bit. We're going to leave this set to no nesting. We're going to go ahead and click OK. And we see now our clip frame file appears. Now we need this here because we're going to be clipping the alignment and the topo file, so we needed to see those, and I wanted to go through the process. So we're going to attach now the alignment and the topo all at the same time. I'm going to click Attach. I'm going to select the AA file. I'm going to hold down the Control key and select the BB file. So I've selected two files. We're now going to be changing our attachment method from interactive to coincident world. That would have been the only change we would have made in our example on the interactive dialog. So if we were just going to choose coincident world, that's it. We could just pre-do that, and then it attaches it automatically using that method. So I've got the two files selected. Click Open. We can now see the other files are attached. The next thing I want to do is I want to be able to clip the alignment and the topo. So what I'm going to need to do is come down here to my alignment file and my topo file. I'm going to select both of them. Again, holding down the Control key or Shift, whatever works for you. I'm then going to select the clip reference file. I can clip multiple files at one time. Those two files being selected, they will highlight to, in this case, a magenta color, so I can see which ones are going to be clipped. On my tool settings window, I have three different methods. I have active fence, which I don't have a fence active, so that's grayed out. I have element and named fence. I'm going to be choosing element. Now, it wants me to choose a shape, and the shape is coming from that clip frame file. Now, I know it's a little difficult to see, but I know where it's at. I'm finding it right over here. Make sure you're highlighting the correct element when you do this. If you click the wrong shape, it will give you an incorrect clip. So I'm going to left click on this element, and you can see it's clipped the topo and the alignment, whatever I had selected down here. So you want to be careful about that. Then I can go ahead and select the clip frame file, and then I can turn the display off. And now you can see my sheet, in this case L6, is coming together. So that's clipping my reference files, attaching my reference files. Now we're going to talk about turning on and off the display of levels within a reference file. So I'm going to open my level display. So I'm going to do a Control E. This will open up my level display dialog. On the left, you're going to see there's my active file. And then you're going to see there's my reference files. You'll notice clip frame is grayed out. That's because it's currently turned off. I'm going to select my BB file, and then what I see below are the levels for that reference file. And I can then come and turn them off one at a time. So I can turn them back on as I want to. And this is true of any one of these reference files. Now I also could, for example, turn the display of the clip frame back on from the level display dialog. I would right click on it, go down to display, which you can see is unchecked. If I select it, you can see I can turn that back on, or I can come right click and turn it off. So you do have some options for controlling the reference files, in this case display or locate or snap. So now we've got our drawing looking the way we want to. Now there's another way to turn off levels, and I'm going to show you. If I go to my file, active file on the list box, if I come down in this list box area here, I'm going to right click. There's an option called off by element. Now this is tough to get to because you have to open the level display and then right click in the list box to get to it. It's a very powerful tool, but it allows me to turn off a level by picking the element. So I'm going to show you a faster way to get to that. So I'm going to close my level display. I'm going to, on my mouse, press and hold the right button down, and what I'm going to see is the context menu. About a third of the way down is level off. It is the same tool. So if I select that, it puts me in a tool called change level. In this case, the level option is display off. I can then pick an element. In this case, I'll do a contour and just turn that level off, even if it's in a reference file. I can do that to my active file or my reference file. Now, if that's not the level I wanted to turn off, I can do a view previous, which the shortcut is shift right click. I can go to view previous, provided I didn't zoom in or zoom out. Each one of those would be considered a view previous. So next we're going to talk about nested reference files. So there's a level that I want to turn on. So I'm going to do a Control E. I'm going to turn on nested refs. I'm going to zoom out, and here is a diagram that I want us to look at. So I'm going to come over here, and we're going to go ahead and do a window area so you can see this clearly. And move my reference file dialog box up and close that. So this hopefully will help to explain what nested reference files means. So if I go to attach a reference file, and let's say, for example, I'm in my active file and I'm going to attach, let's say, the clip frame file. Now I've already have it attached, but we're going to walk through it as if I didn't. So I'm going to go to attach. I'm going to select that file. I'm going to set it to interactive for my attachment method. I'm going to click open. Now this is where we see listed down here, about 3/4 of the way down, is our nested attachments. So let's go ahead and move this to the side. The first option is no nesting, as I mentioned before. Then we have live nesting and copy attachment. So let's take a look and see what this means. In our diagram, in the top left, this is our active file, and we're attaching the clip frame file. Well, the clip frame file theoretically could have attached to it additional reference files. So for example, it could have attached the alignment file and the topo file, and the alignment file could have attached as a reference file to it the ESA, the grading, and the right-of-way, and so on. Now these are depths of nesting, and if I was to choose no nesting, it would only attach the clip frame file and it would ignore everything else, so it wouldn't see this other relationship. But if I was to change this to live nesting, I get an option for nesting depth, and I'm just going to change that to 2 for the sake of discussion here. If I did that, if I attached the clip frame file and have it set to live nesting, and I set the depth to 2, then it would attach the clip frame file and the alignment and the topo and the ESA grading and right-of-way. So this is going to be 6 files attached at one time. Now that live means it stays live, meaning that the relationship, even after you attach it, the relationship is B is attached to A and A is attached to my file. If someone was to open up later file B, the alignment file, and they detached all of these other drawings, the ESA, grading, and right-of-way, and then you later open your drawing or reload your reference file, those files would not show up. They would be gone. You didn't detach them. Somebody did that in file B, and they didn't know that you were nesting like this. So live nesting should be used carefully. If you own all your files and you understand the relationships, that's fine. But if you're working with other people who are opening these files, they need to understand that you're doing this. Otherwise, it could create a lot of chaos. And the relationship, because it remains from my active file, I can see file B just fine, just as like any other reference file. From my active file, I would not be able to detach B because B is not attached to my file. B is attached to A, and A is attached to my file. So this is something that you need to be aware of. So if I wanted to detach B, I would actually have to open up file A to do that. Now the third option, which was copy attachments, that's explained over here on the right, at least the results are. So if, again, I get an option to set the depth. If I was to set the depth to 2 and I use copy attachment, it would see this file, the clip frame file, and the other 5 files. But when I clicked OK, attaching it, what I would end up with is direct attachments. All 6 of these files, A through F, would be directly attached to my active file. You would not have this hierarchy. They would all be directly attached. So that's the difference between those nesting options. And again, you just need to be careful about that. If you are using live nesting, and understand that other people may be working with those files and they could change them. So I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to go ahead and close my reference file dialog box. And we can go ahead and turn those levels off. And we come back to our file. So now we're going to look at raster. Now raster, the term raster is kind of a generic umbrella, and it basically covers a lot of different image formats, anything from TIFF, JPEG, JP2, HMR, ECW, PNG. All these things are considered raster file formats, not vector file formats. And here at Caltrans, the most common use is for aerial imagery. So that's what we're going to look at. First, we're going to break this into 2 parts. We're going to be attaching a TIFF file that is local to our machine. So we're going to be attaching a raster. And then the second thing we're going to look at is working with what's called WMS or XWMS files. And we'll talk about that second. Both of them will attach imagery, but there is some differences between them. So the first thing we'll look at is attaching a TIFF file to this drawing. First thing we're going to do is we're going to open up our raster manager. So we're going to come up to the primary group. We're going to go to Attach Tools. We're going to see Raster Manager. I'm going to select that. Now you're going to notice there's a couple of other raster files already attached, PDF files. We have all kinds of formats we can attach. Those were there for illustration purposes. So we're going to be going to File, and we're going to go to Attach. You can see the 2 options really we're interested in is raster, which we'll do first, and then there's WMS, which is a concept we'll talk about in a moment. So we're going to choose raster. Now this is going to take me to the last place where I attached a file. In this case, it was my imagery folder. And right now, in the bottom right corner, I have it set to show all files. So I'm going to click here, and you're going to see there's a plethora of different file formats that we can attach. Up at the top, we have common raster formats, and then we have common GeoRaster formats. So TIFF, the file format we have, is supported for both of them. Now I have it set to currently all files, and I did that because I wanted you to see that here, this TIFF file, there's another file with the exact same file name in the same folder, but its extension is TFW. This stands for the TIFF world file or sister file. So in this case, there is a file that contains information that will geolocate this. Sometimes TIFFs can have the coordinate information embedded. Sometimes it's external. So you just need to know a little bit about the raster format and where you got it and how to attach it, because it's not all exactly the same. So in this case, we're going to be attaching the TIFF, so we could change this to only show the common formats, and the TIFF would fall under that category. So when we select that, down below, we have options to make it read-only, which is typically what you would do. That means if I did decide to warp it in any way or clip it, that it wouldn't actually affect the TIFF file itself. Place interactively, we know this has coordinate information, so we would not place it interactively. We would let it place itself. Now, there are times when you get files like, for example, screen captures, things like that, that don't have coordinate information, and you would have to place it interactively. You then would have to move it and scale it and warp it to make it line up. This information is already coordinate correct. We just attach it and it comes in right where it should. Below that is Open Settings Dialog. We're going to do that because there's a couple of things I want you to see. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Open button. This is the settings dialog. At the very top, it tells me things like place interactively. I've got that choice there. We also get an option for level to associate the attachment to a level. TIFF image is not going to be stored on that level. The attachment or pointer to it will be. And this is something you want to be careful about, because if your active level is a level that you're using on a regular basis and you're turning it on and turning it off, if you associate the attachment of the raster to that level, when you turn that level off, the raster will turn off, and that may not be what you want. Now, looking on down below, we're fine for our settings, but down here under Geo Priority, right now, we're going to be leaving it set to attachment because that will attach it correctly, but you're going to need to pay attention because sometimes you may have data, coordinates are in the raster header, or it requires you to look at the sister file. So if you do attach something and it doesn't come in the right location, you can come back and change these settings to see if that will correct it for you. So I'm going to leave it set to attachment. Now I'm just going to click Attach, give it a moment, and again, because this was local, it came up very quickly. Now I can see a much larger area if I zoom out. This is a much larger area than I need to. I'm only interested in layout 6, so I need to clip this. So I'm going to go back and go move this over. I'm going to open my reference file dialog box. Nice little shortcut up here on the primary group is references right there. I can just open the reference dialog box from there. I don't need to go to the attach tools option. I'm going to be turning on my clip frame file because that shape that I clipped the other reference files on, I want to clip the raster on too. So I'm going to turn that back on. You can see that displayed. I then go to my raster. I select the raster file that I want to clip. Now there's two ways to do this. I can go to the edit option and I can go to clip, or I can go and click on the shortcut icon right there, which is faster. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that icon. On the tool settings window, I have three methods: block, element, and fence. Block is where I would just draw a rectangle, or element, which I have a clipping element that I want to use, or the third option, which is grayed out, is fence, because I don't have a fence. So I'm going to use element. Now this has an option or a mode. Through this one tool, I can clip boundary, which is what I want to do. That means show me everything inside the element, or clip mask, which would create a hole, show me everything outside. So we're going to be doing clip boundary, but the one tool performs a clip boundary and a clip mask. So I'm going to use clip boundary. I'm going to be selecting that same shape that we had to clip the two reference files. I'm going to click on it. I've now clipped my raster file. I'm going to turn off the clip frame file. Now there's something else here on the raster manager. When you have this selected, the first column here has to do with the plane. This is how it relates to the elements in the file. Right now it's on background, meaning it's behind my elements. This may get flipped around, so if I click on that, I have a choice to change this. I can move it to the foreground, which is generally not what you want to do, but sometimes it gets put in the foreground and they can't see their elements. So let me choose foreground, click OK. You can see the elements are actually behind the raster, and again, that's generally not what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I'm going to put it to background, click OK. You can see it's now behind my elements there. So that was attaching a TIFF image, and to turn that off, because I associated it to a level, I could turn that level off, or I have the option here with it selected in the list box, I have the option to turn it off by view. So if I click on one, which I'm looking at view 1, I've turned it off. I can click it again and turn it back on. So that's attaching a TIFF file, that's turning it on and turning it off and adjusting the plane. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to detach that. So I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to go to detach. And I've detached that particular TIFF file. Now the second way of attaching aerial information is using what is referred to as the XWMS. I'm going to open the level display. So that's going to be Control E. There's a level that has information I need to see. It's called O2 XWMS Raster. I'm going to turn that on, and we're going to go look at that information. This illustration hopefully will help you to understand better what we're about to do. Caltrans has entered into an agreement with a company called Hexagon. They are hosting the imagery on their servers. So this is outside of Caltrans. It's not a local server in a district or in headquarters. How we see that information in MicroStation is we tell MicroStation to look to these server locations for this information. We can attach a XWMS file directly to your drawing, but there's limitations to that. Number one, you would not be able to clip it. That's a problem. And then you also would not be able to manipulate it in any other way, which we shouldn't be doing anyway. But the biggest problem was being able to clip it. So the workaround for this, Headquarters has created a number of files already there for you. We'll talk about this, where they're located on the C drive. These DGN files are per zone, and they already have attached to them these XWMS files. So here in this illustration on your local computer, you have your active file. You're going to attach another DGN file that has attached to it the XWMS file, which then looks out to the server. And the advantage here is our file, we are attaching another DGN, we can clip that DGN. And by clipping that DGN, just as we did before, we will also be clipping the attached raster or XWMS file. This is the logic behind this. This illustration hopefully gave you a little bit of insight to what we're about to do. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that level off, do a fit view, zoom out here. Now we're going to be attaching the DGN that has the XWMS attached to it. So I'm going to go ahead and close level display. We're going to be attaching a DGN, which again has the XWMS. So I'm going to go to my reference file dialog box. I'm going to go to attach. Now where this file is, I've been there before. So if I go up to the yellow folder, blue star, click on that, it'll show me a history of places that I've attached files before. It's a great shortcut instead of me having to click up and down the folder structure. So the file I'm looking for here is C drive, Caltrans, HQ, MS Connect, DGN, XWMS, and then I'm in zone 6, so I was in a zone 6 folder. If I go here, you'll see there's 3 DGN files. These 3 DGN files have attached to them 3 different XWMS files. So I'm going to change my files of type down here to show all files. So in this folder, you can see listed there the XWMS files that are again attached to the DGN. I want you to see what's inside one of these. So I'm going to go to this one is zone 6, 30 centimeter resolution. If I select it, well, I get a preview on the right. If I open this, I'm going to go ahead and open this up. It's just an XML file, but up here you can see it's pointing outside of Caltrans. These are not stored in your DGN or on your local servers. It's outside. I'm going to close that. We're going to set this back to just seeing CAD files. We're going to be selecting the 30 centimeter satellite imagery here for zone 6. We're going to be using the attachment method interactive, and there's a reason for this, and I'll explain in a moment. So with that said, I'm going to click open. On this dialog, down at the very bottom, under the toggles, there's a button down here. It says Display Raster References. If that's not on when you attach that DGN that has an XWMS attached to it, you won't see the XWMS or the raster information. You can then turn it on after the fact, but it's probably best to turn that on before you attach that DGN. So I've already got it on. I'm going to click OK. Now this may take a moment to come up. Again, it's outside of Caltrans. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit. Sometimes that helps it to appear. There we go. So now you see there's my aerial imagery in the background. Now this aerial imagery will resolve it. What that means is as you zoom in, the information will first appear very blurry, low resolution, but given a moment, it will improve. So I'm going to demonstrate that. I'm going to zoom in on an area pretty quickly, this roadway. Now you can see it's very pixelated, not very clear, but if I give it a few moments, so this depends on your bandwidth, connectivity, how many people are hitting the server, things like that. So we're going to wait for a moment for this to resolve in this area. So there it is. You can see it's much clearer now. So this takes a moment for this to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out here for our entire sheet. We are now going to clip the reference file that has attached to it the XWMS. Matter of fact, on the Raster Manager, you can see the XWMS file attached. Now it's a light gray color, indicating that it's not attached to our file directly, but it's coming through the other reference file. Now on the reference file dialog box, we're going to go ahead and turn on our clip frame again. We're going to select the DGN that has attached to it the XWMS. We're going to clip it, just like we did before. So we clip the DGN that has the XWMS. Now we're going to turn off the clip frame file. And now we have our raster background there. So that's a couple of ways for you to attach raster imagery. Again, I just showed you a TIFF way. I showed you the XWMS via another DGN file. And again, there's all 6 zones are up there, and you can see different imagery there. So there may be times when there's a lot of activity on your network or a lot of people hitting the server, and you won't see the imagery, but what you'll see are basically a red circle with a slash and an old-time camera inside it. That means that it timed out looking for that imagery. So sometimes there's the trick of just saving your settings, close the file, reopen, or close MicroStation, reopen. Some of those things help to resolve that. Well, hopefully you found this information helpful. Get you started with reference files and raster, and we will see you in the next video.